everybody. Craig DeLuz back here, Firearms Policy Coalition. We are at the Gun Rights Policy Conference 2018 in Chicago, Illinois. That's right, Chi-Town, the murder capital of the United States, where they, by the way, for some reason, seem to want to ban our guns because they think that guns are bad. Well, right now we have with us a good friend of mine who actually wants to turn that whole narrative on its side. He is the author of Good Gun, Bad Guy, 1 and 2. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Dan Wos. Dan,
hey,
thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about the kind of the premise behind the books, and then tell us kind of what got you started in it.
Well, the premise behind the book is to talk about the strategies and tactics of the anti-gun crowd, and you know how they change the narrative, how they manipulate the media, how they change people's minds, and make people fear guns and teach people to hate gun owners. But it's the strategies and tactics that really interested me because I could see it happening and I could see people getting convinced of this fake narrative, and I didn't quite know exactly how it was happening. So as I researched it, I started to understand their strategies and tactics. So that's basically what the book is about, as I expose all that stuff so people can see what and when they're doing to change the narrative, which will ultimately influence legislators to restrict at least or take away your gun rights.
Okay. So now I see that you have a 1 and a 2. What's the difference between the two books?
Well, the first book talks more about the mindset of the anti-gunner, the average person on the street, the people that we interact with every day, the people in a grocery store, in the coffee shop, and understanding how they think, kind of like what I was just telling you. So the second book, Good Gun, Bad Guy 2, Destroying the Anti-Gun Narrative, talks more about how the media is involved and how they step in to help influence and create that anti-gun landscape. What they do, how the seeds they plant in the minds of millions of people to help them kind of lean their way. So second book is more about how the media influences the overall narrative.
All right. So share with us a little bit about your background.
Well, the background's interesting, and you know, I must have told the story 1,000 times, but people like to hear it. I was at one point I was anti-gun, but it didn't start off.
It ain't so.
No, it didn't start off like that though. The good news is, and this is what saved me. I came from a pro-gun family. My dad taught me how to shoot, took me hunting, target shooting, and stuff. So when I was a kid, I was familiar with guns and I knew how to use them safely. But it was when I got into my 20s after my father died, I started, I like to say, hanging with the wrong crowd. And it wasn't bank robbers or drug dealers, it was anti-gun liberals. And that influence gets in your head. And we are our environment, the people we surround ourselves with, have an influence on us because our community that we surround ourselves with help influence our beliefs. And once our beliefs change about a topic, our thoughts change on a daily basis. So now I'm running around with these new beliefs, and it changes the way I think on a daily basis. Well, those daily thoughts change the way they affect the way we act, and the decisions we make and the choices we make. So ultimately, if you can change the way someone's beliefs about something, anything, I don't care what it is, if you can change their beliefs, you can change the way they act.
Right. Well, their value. First of all, values are the foundation, and beliefs come from that foundation. It's usually the information that comes in put together with those values is what helps to develop the belief.
Right.
So the key has got to be you've got to start by addressing the values and then the information. Because a lot of times, even then, the information can change the values if the information is significant enough.
Right.
And that's the hardest part with many anti-gunners I find is that most of the time their values and their beliefs are based on misinformation.
Exactly. And I'm so glad you brought up values because if you don't have strong values or strong opinions, or you weren't raised with certain values on a topic, you don't really know, you don't go either way. So your values are easily changed along with your beliefs. And that's what happened to me. But it wasn't until I started to see the whole thing with a little more logic, and I started to, you get a little bit of that cognitive dissonance where you have this belief, but you act this way, and it doesn't quite match.
Right.
So it started to feel uncomfortable. I couldn't go about my life with acting the way I was with the initial beliefs and values that I had from when I was a kid. So and then I had an incident where I almost wouldn't have been able to protect my wife in a situation that we were in. I tell the story in the book. And I got back to the car with her, and we managed to get out of this bad situation unharmed. And I told her I was sorry, and she said, "Well, what are you sorry for? What are you apologizing? You didn't do anything. It was that guy." And I said, "Yeah, but I don't know if I would have been able to defend you tonight if I needed to." I said, "I'm getting a gun." And so I eventually brought her on board, and she was she came from a non-gun family.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. So it wasn't easy, but I eventually got her on board. And then as I started researching, I wrote an article that got picked up by a lot of websites about that night,
right,
and how it changed me. And then I started writing and writing and writing, and the first book just kind of wrote itself. And then as I started to research the actual strategies that are being done is when it really got interesting.
All right, now I understand that you also do kind of a video thing where you kind of break down anti-gun media coverage.
Yeah.
And you kind of break that down. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, my good friend Jan Morgan went on CNN one day, and they weren't exactly fair with her when they interviewed her.
CNN wasn't fair. I'm shocked.
Jan Morgan is a Second Amendment advocate, and she is a powerhouse in the industry. She is a real strong voice, especially for women Second Amendment rights, but for Second Amendment rights in general. And she's a good friend. So she called me up and she said, "Dan, can you look at this? Can you look at this video and try to analyze what's happening here in this interview?" And I went through and I looked at it and I analyzed it line by line. Everything that they would say, I would point out what they were doing and what the strategy was to manipulate the conversation, because it was her and it was it was an anti-gun guest as well. And the way they had the whole thing play out was very manipulative. So I analyzed the whole thing with an audio narrative over the video, and I put it out, and it people just loved it, and it got the whole thing. I don't know how many people saw it, but it was a lot. And people say, "You got to keep doing this. You got to keep doing it." I'm thinking to myself, this is my normal research. This is what I do and how I analyze this stuff to write the books. This is no big deal to me. This is just, I didn't think people would be interested. They absolutely loved it.
Well, I'll tell you, the most popular video that we have on YouTube is a episode of Coffee with Craig that I did. It was called "When an Anti-Gun Story Goes Horribly Wrong."
Oh, okay.
And it was a local station, actually out of the Bay Area, called me up, wanted to do an interview to talk about some anti-gun bills that were supposed to be introduced. And completely and utterly butchered the story because they didn't have enough knowledge or understanding as to what the various stories were about,
yeah,
and how, if at all, they were interconnected. And because what I was saying didn't fit their narrative, you could literally see where they cut my interview. Yeah. And to be honest, what I have found is that largely the mainstream media will not misrepresent our position, or at least when I'm speaking, I have never been misrepresented. Our position largely is underrepresented.
Yeah.
In other words, there may be an entire article, a 6-page or 6-paragraph article or 10-paragraph article, and maybe you'll get one line in that entire article. But rarely do they ever just flat out just misrepresent it. But there are cases. And what they try to do is, I think what you try to expose is they try to manipulate you into saying things that are sound bites that they can then pull in to misrepresent your position.
Well, and some of the strategies, it's exactly right. The underrepresentation is sometimes worse because they can literally cut stuff right out and make you say half of what you really, what you wanted to say. And I use this as a very simple. Here's a very simple example of things that they'll do. They'll say things like, "Because guns are dangerous, don't you think we should have this new regulation or this new restriction?" So what's happening there is that because guns are dangerous, it presupposes that guns are dangerous. And,
Right.
the way our brains work is we're always working to solve the problem. Our brains
Right.
are problem-solving machines. So you say, because guns are dangerous, don't you think we should have this? So you're thinking about whether or not we should have this rule, this restriction.
And so you
You're
have to
not
deal with the
even
initial
thinking.
thing.
You have to deal with the
No,
initial thing.
guns are not dangerous.
Right.
If I took my gun out right now and set it here on the table,
Yeah.
guess what? It wouldn't shoot
Right.
anybody.
There's no such thing as gun violence. That's another thing that I say. There's no such
Exactly.
thing as gun violence. There's human violence, and we need to bring the media back to reality on that. But you're exactly right. So we get hung up on their narrative, and we try to play ball in their park when we answer those questions, and that's dangerous.
Well, and I've spent a lot of time dealing with mainstream media and doing a lot of interviews and doing a lot of debates, and I think you're 100% right, is you have to know going into an interview, know who it is that's interviewing you, know kind of how they do what they do, but also go in with, these are my point. These are the things that I'm going into this interview with the goal to communicate. Have your talking points. Be quotable.
Yeah.
Be able. I always say, speak in quotable statements. Right.
Right.
That way, you give them something. Because in the end, here's the thing I find about most journalists. Most journalists, right, left, or whatever, they want something that is going to grab people.
Sure, they want that little
They
talking
want that.
point.
They want that
little,
sound bite.
Yeah, sound bite. Yeah.
And if you got to learn to speak in sound bites, but sound bites that communicate your overall message.
Sure.
And I think too often we go into it with our heart and all this stuff, and we actually wind up giving too much.
Yeah. We have to find a way to condense it
Yeah.
down, get the point, because that's what they're going to use.
Right.
And you're right. If it's too complex, it's not a good soundbite, and it probably won't get used. Yeah. So good
And
point.
but on the contrast, and this is one of the reasons why we do one of the things we do at FPC is we found that largely it's hard to get the Second Amendment community to be out there and be active and be involved in the media. The NRA doesn't do a lot of interviews. They figure they have their own method and
contained,
mode
yeah.
of communicating to their people.
Sure.
Which I think is great, and I support that. The big challenge, though, is that there are a lot of people out there who might be on our side if they heard our message.
Yeah.
And that's why we're out there. That's why we make it a point to be engaged in the mainstream media strategically, not just haphazardly, and making sure that our message is
And
focused.
you guys are doing a fantastic job.
Thank you. Well, that is no accident, and we have a very good team who make sure that we have the right information, that we make sure that what we say is consistent with the values that we want to communicate out, and we have folks like Brandon Combs and Richard Thompson who work there at FPC who help make sure even though I'm the one you hear talking a lot. Everything that I say, the stuff that we do, the stuff that we work on is all a team effort, and making sure that those values are consistently communicated.
Yeah.
And I think it's right in line with the work that you're doing.
Well, yeah. It sounds like it is. I mean, if we all seem to be on the same page here, especially this weekend.
Yes.
I don't know if you're talking about this weekend, but this weekend's real special, and a lot of different people from different areas of the, I hate to use the term gun community, but Second Amendment patriots.
Second Amendment advocacy.
Yeah.
You've got folks from Knife Rights who are here.
Yeah.
A lot of people get caught up in I saw one of my commenters said, "Oh, well, see, because you just call it the gun rights conference, well, then you're just you're dwindling down the Second Amendment." I'm like, no, we're not doing that. Let's not get caught up in semantics. But the idea is we believe in the right to keep and bear arms, whatever those arms are.
Yeah.
How do folks get your book?
Oh, they can go to goodgunbadguy.net or goodgunbadguy.com, or you can search Good Gun Bad Guy on Amazon.
Fantastic. Well, sir, thank you so very much,
Thank
Dan.
you.
We very much appreciate you guys
Thank
coming
you.
on, or you guys appreciate you coming on. I know that you're probably getting a lot of interest, a lot of folks who want to talk to you this weekend. But once again, we appreciate you. We appreciate the work that you're doing, and I would love to have you on the show again. Maybe as some of these interviews and things that are going on, would love to kind of have your perspective on some of these.
Got my number anytime.
All right, fantastic. All right, folks, well, that's going to be it for this interview. But like I said, there's going to be a lot more coming up, so you guys stay tuned. Please remember to like and share these videos. Tell your friends about what's going on here at Gun Rights Policy Conference so that they can come next year. But also, please remember to tell them about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.
Guess what? So the doctors were worried about us.
If you want more interviews by me, click one of the videos on the right. And if you haven't read Good Gun Bad Guy or Good Gun Bad Guy 2, I'm offering limited time autographed copies. So click the link below. And remember, your Second Amendment, it's not a privilege, it's your right.